Hello viewers, today we shall discuss the growth of television, particularly Doordarshan in India in the 80s and 90s. Now as we have seen in the earlier lectures, the growth of television in India has been rather slow and tentative in the first 20 years after India's independence, first 20 or 30 years. But it really started taking off when Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, because she really understood the true potential of television as a medium of propaganda on one hand, and on the other hand as a medium to hold the entire country together, to unify the entire country. So through her efforts, television had started expanding, and quite rightly she used to be called the televisionary Prime Minister. But the turning point for India's television came in 1982 during the Asian Games. Now, India hosted the Asian Games in 1982. The venue of the Games was New Delhi, and as the host country, the onus was on India to bring the Games live to all the homes in India, and also to give live feeds to all the other participating countries. So it was a big task, huge responsibility, and the question was technologically India ready to take up this responsibility? Now Vasant Sathe, who was the Information and Broadcasting Minister at that time, he had visited Sri Lanka, and he had seen even our tiny neighbor Sri Lanka had color television in 1982, 81, 82. So why couldn't India have color television? Now, many advisors in the Prime Minister's advisory board advised against it, saying that India was a developing country and color television was not its priority, television was a luxury for the majority of Indians, and so on and so forth. But still, it was a question of prestige. So therefore, all those skepticisms were brushed aside, and the decision was taken to introduce color television in India, so that color feeds of the Asian Games could be brought into people's homes and given to the other participating countries. So that was one major step forward. Another major step was to bring down the import duty, because India still didn't manufacture color televisions. Color televisions had to be imported. So if people were to buy color television sets, it had to be affordable. So therefore, import duty on television sets were drastically brought down, and also duty on other electrical gadgets which were necessary to put the television sets together was brought down. So color television became affordable, and people, at least in the big metros, people started lining up to buy color televisions for their homes. So that was the second thing. And the third major step was the launch of INSAT 1A. Because in India, the satellite technology was quite advanced thanks to Vikram Sarabhai and his team. So INSAT 1A, the geostationary satellite, was supposed to beam the television signals over the entire country. And later INSAT 1A was taken over by INSAT 1B. So through this satellite technology, the entire country was networked, and today what is known as national program or national network started. That means for the first time, it was possible for the entire country to see the same visuals simultaneously. Now this national program was launched on a very auspicious day, which is the 15th of August 1982. And we were all set to broadcast the Asian Games live, which were held in November-December 1982 in New Delhi. And the entire country was the Asian Games live in its full-blown color, in all its multifarious hues. So that was a big step forward. Now, what was the repercussion of going color and hooking up the entire nation through satellite technology? The repercussion was that advertisers realized that television was now a big platform to capture the national market. earlier the advertisers were not much interested in airing their television commercials on television, because the reach of television was not much, and it was only limited to the big cities and so on. But now the entire country was hooked up to television. At this point, I must say, when we are talking about the technological progress, it became a priority for the government of India to launch either a high power transmitter or a low power transmitter every day. At least one transmitter would be launched every day, so that the television would reach even the rural hinterland, it would reach the nook and crannies of the entire country without the use of the dish antenna. Because otherwise, to receive the programs beamed from the satellites, one needs to have dish antenna. But now, because of these transmitters which were launched all over the country, the length and breadth of the country, Doordarshan became a terrestrial network. The need for the dish antenna was completely bypassed, and Doordarshan in fact even turned to be the biggest terrestrial television network in the whole world. So that really attracted the advertisers, as I was saying, and the advertisers found it a great opportunity to sell their products to the entire country by airing their commercials on Doordarshan. So Doordarshan also realized this, and they started selling their spaces, their time slots to the advertisers. And this entire thing about sponsored programs, giving away programs to independent producers, this entire culture started. So therefore, a variety of programs were made, most of them not by the in-house producers of Doordarshan, most of them were by independent producers, and the cost of these programs were borne by the advertisers, who bore the cost of the programs as well as bought the time slots for Doordarshan. And since Doordarshan was the only television channel available in India those days, Doordarshan actually called the slots, and they decided at what rate they would sell their time slots. So evening times were the prime time slots, then there were these breakfast time slots, noon time slots for housewives and retired people, late night slots which were for the niche audience who would keep awake to see programs of which they really liked. So according to the nature of the program, they decided in which time slot this particular program would fit in, and they started calling out rates for their time slots. So that was actually the beginning of the golden era of television, Indian television, that is Doordarshan, our national broadcaster, because then the 70% of the total expenditure was covered by advertisement revenues. In the 70s, it was merely 1%. That suddenly jumped to 70% with the launch of the national network, within a couple of years of the launch of the national network. So that was really a big leap forward, not only technologically, but also financially. Okay, and these independent producers started producing programs to hook the audience. And for them, it was a great opportunity to turn the entire nation into consumers, if I may say so. And for the Indians, it was absolutely a new experience to see such a variety of commercials, and the jingles were catchy, they would stay in your mind, the visuals were very seductive, okay, and so slowly their value systems changed, their values of thrift and saving money, those gave way to consumerism. So India as a nation slowly started becoming a nation of consumers, thanks to all these television commercials that were aired on Doordarshan. Now the sponsors, which were the corporates of these programs, they started having their say in the program contents also, because they wanted the programs to reach out to that section of the audience who had enough disposable income, enough money power to buy goods like motor cars and refrigerators and washing machines and so on, even expensive clothes and Raymond suits and expensive shoes and so on and so forth. Okay. So, they started modifying the programs to suit the taste of this class of consumers who had this much of disposable income. And that was in direct contrast of the avowed mandate of Doordarshan, which was that Doordarshan would be used for the development of the nation, for national integration and to hold the entire country together. And that is where the Doordarshan big bosses had to do a balancing act. That means they had to select programs that would serve the development purpose as well as that would serve the purpose of the, or rather the wish list of the sponsors who would actually shell out money for the production of the programs. So, that was a very tough balancing act to do, but as a result of the balancing act, actually we have had an array of very good programs in the 80s and the 90s. So, let us take a peek into some of these programs, and the first program that one must mention is Hum Log. All of you must have heard of Hum Log. It is supposed to be India's first soap opera. Now, it so happened that our Information Broadcasting Minister Vasant Sathe was visiting Mexico, and he saw that the Mexicans had actually mastered the art of developmental communication packaged in a very entertaining way. So, their developmental programs were extremely popular and extremely entertaining, and he felt that there was a lesson to be learned from here. So, he sent a scriptwriter Manohar Shyam Joshi to Mexico to learn this art, to learn this craft of writing for developmental communication, which would also be entertaining. And the result was the script for Hum Log, which, as we know, that was extremely popular. It used to be aired in the evenings, most probably Tuesday evenings, once a week, and it was extremely popular. And Hum Log was the story of a very, very lower middle class family living in a 2-room tenement in Delhi. So, it was a big family, parents, grandparents, 4 children, 4 grown-up children sharing just 2 or 3 rooms, where each child had his or her expectation, his or her aspirations to grow bigger in life, and the entire serial is about how they overcame the hurdles and how they rose up the ladder of success and they improved their material lot as well as professionally they made a mark for themselves. So, it was a very aspirational program. It was targeted to the middle class, and the middle class could easily identify with the problems faced by the characters, and Hum Log was a big success. Some of the other programs which came after Hum Log, which followed after Hum Log, were Udan, which was about a village girl who became a IPS officer, and this was based on a true story. People think it's about Kiran Bedi. It's not Kiran Bedi, it's another lady IPS officer, and it's based on her story. That in spite of coming from very humble background, how she rose to be a very top officer in the IPS ranks. But 2 most important landmark programs in the 80s aired on Doordarshan were the Ramayan and Mahabharat. The Ramayan was produced by Ramanand Sagar and Mahabharat was produced by B.R. Chopra. First to come was Ramayan, which started being aired in 1987. Mahabharat started being telecast in 1988. And both these are landmark programs because they were hugely popular. When Ramayana and Mahabharat were aired on Doordarshan, the streets used to be empty, the bazaars used to be empty. Everybody left all other work and positioned themselves in front of the TV set, and it is said that in some of the villages or smaller towns, they even burnt incense sticks in front of the TV set and garlanded the TV set just before Ramayana was aired, and it was a kind of ritual for the entire family to sit in front of the TV set and watch Ramayana. So, that was the kind of hold Ramayana and Mahabharat had on the mind of the Indian people. But there was a lot of criticism about Ramayana and Mahabharat also. it was criticized that this was a Hindutva agenda that was being pushed through the national network. And at the same time, the gender values shown in Ramayana, particularly in Ramayana, there was a lot of objection because it was shown that Sita was pressing Ram's feet, which was considered to be very, very regressive, and the feminists were up in arms against such visuals. So there was a lot of criticism. So in spite of the criticism, Ramayana and Mahabharat remained hugely popular, and the television ratings that they garnered at that time, that will never be surpassed, because now the viewership is totally fragmented. That time that it was the only television channel, and the entire country was watching television when Ramayana was aired. So that was the kind of sway that Doordarshan could garner with very, very popular programs. Now I come to some of the non-fiction programs that were aired at this time, and perhaps the most famous non-fiction program was The World This Week, which made Prannoy Roy a household name and a very, very popular face in the Indian psyche. Now, it so happened that The World This Week, when in the 80s The World This Week started being aired, a lot of revolutionary incidents were happening all over the world. The Berlin Wall broke down. There was this glasnost and perestroika, as a result of which there was a lot of upheaval in all the East European countries. Then there was this student unrest in Tiananmen Square in China, and all these things the Indian people watched in The World This Week, because Prannoy Roy bought these footages from Reuters at a very cheap rate, and he repackaged them in his program, and the Indian public actually, just gobbled it up, because for them showing these visuals, watching these visuals on television was a very, very new experience. It was as if they were watching history unfolding in front of their eyes. They felt that they were a part of history. So that made World This Week extremely popular, and Prannoy Roy also a very, very popular figure. In addition to World This Week, there used to be a program called Janvani, which I feel that it was a revolutionary program, because every week one central minister used to be invited to the television studio, and the common people would ask them questions. So some of these common people were already there in the TV studio, and some of them who could not come to Delhi to attend the program, their letters were read out during the program. And the minister, when he knew that millions of people were watching him, so whatever commitment the minister made in the television studio to the people, he had to keep that commitment. So he became more answerable to the people, and it was a stronger way. Television made the process of democracy stronger, and the common people participants in the process of democracy. So that way Janvani was a very, very revolutionary program, and the program host was Vinod Dua. So Vinod Dua became another popular face in television and in the minds of the people. So like that, there were many such interesting programs. Science programs used to be aired, and there used to be a series called Turning Point, which was a science magazine. So Professor Yashpal himself came and he gave explanations to scientific principles, and then some of the current affairs programs, the scientific angle, to some of the current affairs programs, like it could have been cricket or it could have been a cyclone, those were analyzed. Okay, so Turning Point was an interesting program. Bharat Ek Khoj, which was an adaptation of Discovery of India, and the entire series was directed by Shyam Benegal. Bharat Ek Khoj was extremely popular. Another science serial was Bharat Ki Chhap, which was an exposition of the history of science and technology in India, right from the Stone Age to the modern times. So Bharat Ki Chhap was also a very, very well-researched program, and the funding came from Department of Science and Technology. It was a 1 crore series, entire series cost 1 crore, and the funding came from the Department of Science and Technology. So like that, some very, very good programs happened in this era because it was something new, and the Doordarshan wanted to give chance to these independent producers to come up with new programs. Secondly, since advertisers were willing to invest in these programs, so some of these programs, particularly Ramayan Mahabharat, could be very high budget programs also. So therefore the budget was there, people were willing to spend, the time slot was there, the political scenario was just right to experiment and come up with programs of national relevance, and we saw a flowering of some of the landmark programs that Indian television has ever seen. Also, Doordarshan bought the famous television series from BBC and the other television channels. So therefore, the Indian viewers got a chance to watch Living Planet, Cosmos, Ascent of Man, and also soaps and serials like Dallas and Dynasty and Faster Fenny and such programs. So therefore, they got an exposure to very, very popular foreign television programs also. So things were going very well, but things started changing slowly with the coming of the Gulf War. And only the American television channel CNN had got access to cover the Gulf War live. So naturally the Indian public wanted to see the Gulf War, because the world this week had, developed an appetite for them to see this, events of importance live on television. So they wanted to see the Gulf War live. So what they did is, the cable TV, those who were supplying this cable TV network in apartment houses and other localities, they invested in dish antenna, and they brought this CNN into the homes of people in, at least in the big cities in India like Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, etc. So therefore, one can say that the satellite television entered Indian homes through the back door. Because this was like a small scale cottage industry, this was totally unofficial. Okay, there was no government sanction as such for it, but then there was no rule to clamp it down also. So it entered through the back door, and after the Gulf War was over, because the technological infrastructure was there, other television channels started coming in, particularly Star TV, BBC World, MTV, Star Sports and Discovery Channel. So these were the foreign channels that started coming into the people's homes completely unofficially, but then people were watching, and so the viewership of Doordarshan slowly started falling. And around this time an Indian television channel also started, which was Zee TV. It was started by Subhash Chandra Goyal. So he was a maverick entrepreneur who just thought that this was an opportunity to do an experimentation in the communication, and he started this Zee TV, which used the same satellite transponder as Star TV. So that was the Indian channel, all the other channels were foreign channels. But then the different kinds of programs were being brought by these channels, and so the viewership of Doordarshan slowly started waning. But I must tell you one thing, that even Zee TV, even though the programs were produced in Bombay, they had their studio in Bombay, their office in Bombay, but every week somebody went to Hong Kong with the tapes, Betacam tapes, because independent Indian producers, they were not allowed to air their programs from the Indian soil. Okay, that was the prerogative of only Doordarshan and All India Radio. So even if they produced the programs, they had to broadcast it from Hong Kong. So every week somebody went to Hong Kong with the tapes. But whatever that be, the popularity of these programs grew, and eventually due to public pressure the laws changed, and then programs started being aired from the Indian soil, and a lot of channels opened up. Very soon there were about 300 channels, some of them national, some of them local, that were airing their programs, and the popularity of Doordarshan fell completely. So by the turn of the millennium, by the year 2000, Doordarshan had lost most of its viewership, and the entire viewership had shifted to these private channels. So that is the story of Doordarshan, and it's very sad that in spite of being at the top, at the height of popularity, and in spite of having all the technological backup that was necessary, Doordarshan couldn't hold on to its audience. So with those thoughts, I end today's program. Thank you very much.